This is part one of our information about saving seeds from our homegrown produce, and we won't be looking at all different types of seeds, but what we will be looking at is those that we're doing in grow-alongs that are easy as a home gardener to save and don't take too much work or indeed having too much space to do so. So the book that I would recommend if you are interested in this subject is the Back Garden Seed Saving book, which is written by Sue Stickland, and it's one that gives a lot of information and is really helpful to give you all the details that you need in order to do this. Tomatoes are mostly easy to save seed from, but there are a couple of varieties that may be a little bit more difficult and that we need to isolate. So I'll pop a picture up at the different types that you're looking for whether they are open pollinated. The other thing to consider is that if you've grown these from an F1 or an F2 variety of seed, then it's either not going to produce seeds that are going to be the plant that you've actually grown, so they won't be the same tomatoes, or they may not actually produce any seeds for you at all. They may not grow. Once you've worked out whether or not your seeds are suitable for saving from, the next thing we need to think about is what seeds we wish to save off of which plants. So when we are looking at saving seeds, we are never looking at saving seeds from plants that have just gone to seed very quickly and bolted, because that's going to give us the characteristics of anything that is going to bolt. We are looking for characteristics of it being a good productive plant, the size and the flavour of the plant that you want or the fruit, and particularly with tomatoes that you found to be pest resistant in your garden or have thrived within your area. When we save a seed, we also have then the opportunity for those characteristics to be protected within our own environment. Our own microclimates are going to provide it with a unique set of issues and protections that other gardeners won't have in their own garden. So when we save seed from our own plants, it can often help us grow more healthy plants for the next years coming. We also want to make sure that any seeds that we save from with tomatoes have been completely ripened on the vine. So with the tomato grow along that we've been doing, we take them off of the vines when they're at a half ripe stage, and then we continue to ripen them in the house. When we're saving seeds from these tomatoes, they must ripen on the vines in order for the seeds to be at full maturity and then be able to produce more plants. So we're looking for one of our tomatoes that are completely ripe on the vine. So this one's nice and soft and squidgy and ready now for us to take the seeds out. Giving it a quick wash because we're going to pop this into the freezer for saucing after we've taken the seeds out, so you can still use them exactly as you would before. And then just gonna take the stalk out, which is what I do before I put any tomatoes in the freezer. This is Amish paste, so it's going to be much more meaty than a lot of the other ones, so you'll need to have a bit of a look around and find some seeds amongst the meat. There they are there. And then we're going to pop those seeds into a jar, and we're going to ferment these in order to extract them from the pulp. You can often find that there isn't actually many seeds in these varieties. And then next we're going to add some water. And then we're going to leave this for 3 to 5 days to start fermenting, which will help the seeds extract from the pulp around them. So just leave it on the side in your kitchen and we'll come back to that. So this book very clearly gives us an indication of the 2 different types of flowers that we're looking at when we're looking at whether they're going to cross-pollinate. So this type A, that has nothing poking out the bottom of the flower here, is not likely to cross-pollinate. But this type B, which has a extra little thing poking out the bottom, the stigma, this is the one that we are likely to find that will cross-pollinate. This is likely to happen in some older and less highly bred varieties like your small currant varieties or your large fruited beefsteaks. And the varieties that I've taken a picture of, it is this Cordy Blue is the one that is going to cross-pollinate. So if we wanted to save seeds from these ones, then one thing that we would have to have done before the tomato was ripe, when the flowers are just starting to emerge, is put a mesh bag over the flower to make sure that nothing can come in and cross-pollinate. Tomatoes have a way of self-pollinating. So when we tap them, the pollen from the top of the flower will be released onto the bottom of the flower. So when we add a mesh bag over the flower, they will still be able to self-pollinate within that bag. But for the majority of us, we will be growing varieties like this flower here. But if you are worried about them cross-pollinating, then that is something that we are going to want to check. You probably want a camera that can zoom in or a magnifying glass, because they are really quite difficult to see by the eye. If, however, you only have one variety that has the stigma popping out the bottom like this one, then you don't need to isolate it. It's only if you have two or more that you would need to look at isolating. Commercially, they suggest that isolating without a net would be around 30 meters. So here we have our little jar of tomatoes that have been fermenting in the house for the last around 5 days. Usually you'd find a layer of mould over the top that you would just scoop out now. There is the tiniest amount of mould in here, but mainly it's just looking pretty clear. The variety that I've actually taken these from has very little seeds in each of them, so you will find that each of them will give you a different amount. So there's only going to be a few from this particular one. This is a variety that I've taken off because it's gone ripe quicker, just to show you what I'm doing rather than the size of the ones that I actually want to keep. So we're just going to strain these now and extract the seeds. The jelly that is around each of the seeds is actually going to stop it from germinating. That's why it's in there. That's why it's inside the tomato, and that they don't germinate while they're in the tomato. So we want to make sure that that jelly is completely gone. So we're just going to drain this out, and you can see that the jelly has gone mainly from around each of these seeds now. So we're just going to give it a bit of a rinse off and then push through the sieve any of the other pulp that we don't want to save. And you can see then each of the seeds separate much easier as well. That's what they're looking like now. So the next thing to do is pop them on a plate and let them dry. That's probably the easiest option if you have a lot of tomatoes that you're processing. I'm going to pop it on a little bit of greaseproof today just because it's only a few, and then I can get some tweezers and just gently remove that off the greaseproof. So I've just got an old takeaway pot and a little bit of greaseproof paper that I'm going to use today, and then we're just going to take those seeds and pop them in there. And a few hiding at the top. Once these have dried, we'll be popping them into a paper bag or a little glass jar and making sure to label them. And the last thing I'm going to do is just pop a label in the pots just so I know which variety these are.